All right, boys and girls, welcome back to the drive-thru. Special shout out to Alex's straight hair. She had to sleep in a little bit just so she could give June a little extra love at Tumblebees tonight. I appreciate that, Alex. Looking out for my family. All right, so we're going to give you some help on the 6-4 worksheet today. This is the easiest work that we've done all week, so that's refreshing. I want you to know that you can do all of these in your calculator, and you may want to, but I also want you to know what you're doing. Remember that 125 to the 1/3 power, does anyone remember what that actually means? It is the cube root of 125. Those two things mean the same thing in math. They have to for the rules to work. But what I would suggest that you do on these is legitimately just type in 125 to the, open up a parentheses, type in 1 divided by 3, and close it, and hit enter. Okay? And that should look familiar. The cube root of 125 is indeed 5. Okay? Lex? I don't think it'll work without parentheses. It's going to do 125 to the first, and then it'll divide by 3. Okay? I can't promise you. I'm just recommending the parentheses. Okay? In the time it took you to ask that question, you could have just typed in the parentheses. Okay? And more importantly, Lex, like when you get on in life and you start working with Microsoft Excel, or maybe that won't exist anymore and you got to use Google Sheets, you're going to have to learn how to type these formulas in properly, and parentheses are a critical aspect of that because they're grouping things. Okay? All right, look, there's two ways you can look at 4. One way you could look at 4 is calling that 7 times 7, hopefully you realize that's 49, to the 1/2. Or, I don't know if you remember this, but like, let's take a little time out. What's x squared times x cubed? X to the 5th. So when you're multiplying things with the same base, you add the exponents. Do you remember that? So you could also call this 7 to the 1st. Very good. And both of these things give you what as an answer? So I don't care how you come across these answers. I did the majority of this worksheet in my head, okay? But I also would expect you to use your calculator. Okay? The most important thing is that you know what you're doing. I did not do this one in my head, so I had to multiply 8 times 32, and for that I got 256 to the 1/4 power. Okay? And then I put that in my calculator. 256 to the 1/4, and you get 4. Okay? And again, we can multiply these because they all have the same exponent. So when I do 12 times 45 times 50, I get 2,700, all to the 1/3 power. And when you pop that in your calculator, sorry, I meant to say 27,000 to the 1/3, you get 30. Uh-oh. Oh dear. I swear you get 30. Thank you. Okay? Okay, moving down the page a little bit, we've got 13, 16, and 19 coming up. I'm just trying to pick a various range of difficulty in these problems. Okay? Hopefully this doesn't confuse you too much. What's x to the 1/3? That's the cube root of x. Is that what you meant? Okay? So x to the 4/3, if I just kind of, okay, forget about that for a second. x to the 4/3 is the cube root of x to the 4th. That's all you got to do, okay? You guys got this. Those are the same thing. I'm going to let you look at it for a couple more seconds. I didn't add anything. Just ignore this for now. If you remember that x to the 1/3 is the same thing as the cube root of x, then this just says x to the 4th to the 1/3. And you multiply those two things. Okay? Yeah. Okay, yes, I do agree with your assessment. I really worry about making rules in math because kids aren't likely to A, follow rules, and B, remember the rules. And so what ends up happening is when you use that thought, even though it's right, you don't exactly know what you're doing. You turn yourself into like a robot that's just repeating the process. But you are exactly right. The top number goes inside and the bottom number goes outside. Okay? Yes? That is the answer. What's the direction say? It says write each expression in radical form. 80% of the things we've done so far in Algebra 2 has just been changing the way that something looks. My thought is they're putting you through all this exponential stuff so that you can learn about logs. Logs teach you how to be millionaires. If we don't get there, I promise you, I will teach you how to be a millionaire in 30 years. It is so simple. But every year you wait, it becomes more and more difficult. You have to put in more and more money. And I'll get to that some point. I promise you, I so desire to teach you things that will legitimately help you. Okay? Okay? All right, good questions. So, you can write this one two ways. You could write it as the 5th root of b, or you could write it as the 5th root of b to the 1st. Those are the same thing. Okay? All right, 19's not as easy. Why is it not as easy? It's a decimal. Let me treat you guys how you want me to treat you first, and then I'll show you how I did this second. Okay? 2.4. Type that in your calculator. Hit math. What do we want to do? We want to turn this thing into a fraction. So hit 1. And now we know it's 12/5. So the first thing we're going to just do is rewrite this as m to the 12/5. Now which one goes on the outside, Hottie? That's right. So this is the 5th root of m to the 12th. Okay? I just did it by hand. So you'll see on my... When I show you the key online, I turned 2.4 into 2 4/10. This is why we make you read numbers as they actually are when you're a kid, and then we lose track of that. Like when you get to 7th grade, that becomes 2.4. You got to remember it's actually 2 4/10. So then you go 10 times 2 is 20, plus 4 is 24/10. Which simplifies to 12/5. Christine, did I make a mistake?
No, I was just going to ask if it could be 14.
14? Yeah. Absolutely, Christine, only because you asked. Okay? 14. In parentheses, 2y to the 1/3. Good spot, Christine, because this one's a little different, but it's not a big deal. We just got to have parentheses. So, this is definitely going to be the cube root of something, right? It'll be the cube root of 2y. Now, if you'd like, you could do that. Now, that may come up again. So this is just an example. This is not from your but what if it said 2y to the 5/3? Well, then you'd have to have those parentheses, because this would be correct. That would be correct, And what people would do wrong, does anyone know the difference between those two? Christine? Exactly, very good. This one, everything is to the fifth, meaning you're going to get 2 to the fifth. So this will be the third root of 32y to the fifth, because 2 to the fifth is 32. Where this one is just the cube root of 2y to the fifth. There's a big difference there. And that's why the parentheses that you type into your calculator matter. Okay? Got it? This green was just an example. Okay. We're going to move down to the third section now. Okay. I chose 22. I know it's the first one. But it's actually one that some very good students would probably get wrong. Because they would call it x to the... let's see, what would they call that? I guess x cubed, if they called it wrong. What they forget about, and this is, again, where mathematicians are smart, lazy people, but sometimes they take laziness too far. For some reason, someone decided that when we square root something, you don't need a 2 there. It's just assumed. And that's what would screw kids up on this one. So you'll see on my key that I wrote that 2 in there to remind myself that this is x to the something over 2, right? And that something is 3. So just remember that. There's a 2 out there. Now we are doing the opposite of what we did above. We're just making things look differently, which again is why we just have to read the directions. Okay? So this one's no more complicated than it looks. Even though there's a parentheses around things, you ask yourself, well, b is being taken to the 1/4 power, and then it's being cubed. So that's what you get. If you don't like that, then maybe you prefer it as b to the 1/4 times b to the 1/4 times b to the 1/4. And maybe you're starting to get good enough that you realize that those are the same things. Okay? That is b to the 1/4 cubed. Were you late because you straightened your hair? It really does look quite nice, Alex. Did you have your hair straightened when you went to bed? Wow. Wow. Good thought. All right, this is 5AB. Now, since we have more than one thing down here, you got to have your parentheses. So it's 5AB all to the what? That's right. Very good. Okay? And look, on the back, you got a word problem. You don't get enough of those word problems. It's about inflation. Eventually, for those of you guys that want to go into business school, inflation's going to be a really important thing. So just try it. If you get it wrong, you get it wrong. I'll help you. Okay, but I'm not going to do that one for you because it'd be spoiling the movie. Boom!